Good evening, Africa. Bonjour for our Francophone brothers. Dumelang if you are in the south of the continent. Hujambo for those watching us in the East African region. Assalamu alaikum to those in the north. Or is it Kaifa Halak? My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. You are in time for yet another hour of Bottomline Africa, right here on KTN News, the show that puts your pulse and helps you make sense of events across this beautiful continent. We have a great show lined up for you tonight, and we are focusing on the role of ethnicity in politics. We have political analyst Mark Bichach in studio, anthropologist Hassan Kuchore, as well as Jarvis Bigambo, who is a governance expert. But first things first, as usual, let's take a look at Africa in 60 seconds. The government of Kenya bans demonstrations in the central business districts of Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu with immediate effect. $2.1 million patient voters, 20 presidential candidates. Who will be Liberia's next president? South Africa's Court of Appeal to hand down judgment in the application for leave to apply by President Jacob Zuma this Friday. And tonight we take you to Morocco, where Africa's railway system is about to get a major upgrade. Welcome once again, Africa. This is Bottomline Africa, right here on KTN News. The program begins right now. And let's cross over to a Twitter poll tonight. And we are asking you, do you think that Matiang'i's move to ban NASA protest within Nairobi's CBD is justifiable? Let me just take that again. Do you think that Matiang'i's move, that is the acting interior CS, to ban NASA protest within Nairobi's CBD is justifiable? Remember, he also banned demonstrations in Mombasa as well as the lakeside city of Kisumu. You know the drill. Our Twitter handle is at KTN News. You can as well tweet me at Yusuf Ibra. Remember to always use the hashtag of Bottomline Africa, that is hashtag Bottomline Africa, and I'm going to go through some of the feedback or comments within this program. Now let's begin from right here in Kenya, where Kenya has banned protests in 3 major city centers following weeks of demonstrations by the opposition supporters. Fred Matiang'i, acting internal security minister, said rallies are banned in the central business districts of the capital, Nairobi, the country's second city, Mombasa, and the opposition stronghold of Kisumu. The order follows a meeting of the National Security Advisory Committee on Thursday morning, which relied on recent demonstrations, which resulted to a breach of peace and disorder in the mentioned locations. The CS also warned the organizers of such demonstrations of unspecified charges should the demonstrations stand violent, leading to destruction of property.
For the time being, we will not allow demonstrations within the central business districts of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu. That we shall prefer judges, again is the said Mr. Magaya, and we are waiting for the report on the damages caused so as to quantify the value of the claim.
Now, separately, the NASA leadership, in a swift rejoinder, dismissed the acting CS's threat to target Magaya for the destruction of property, accusing Matiang'i of a political witch hunt. Let's listen in.
This afternoon, after I heard what Matiang'i was saying, I sent him this message via SMS. Mr. Matiang'i, why don't you engage a lawyer to advise you on the constitutionality of your actions, utterances, and threats to innocent Kenyans? You have no power or capacity to ban lawful protests and/or demonstrations. You know what he replied? A single word: nonsense. And I simply sent back an SMS to tell him, that is exactly what you are.
The responsibility to ensure that you are protected as the demonstrator, the responsibility to ensure that other businesses and other Kenyans are not interfered with, rests with the police, not the person giving the notice. It is not true, as Matiang'i says, that the police need to write back to you and confirm availability. The second issue is this. Under the law, a right under Article 37 cannot be constrained, cannot be restricted, except by law.
Well, those are the latest from the Kenya's political situation. Now let's cross over to Monrovia. Liberia's provincial election results are expected today. The Election Commission has said. The National Election Commission said local vote counting had ended after a largely smooth election in that country. It apologized for delays in some areas and said it had quarantined materials from one precinct and will investigate reports of alleged compromised voting. A runoff seems likely as an official reports from the Liberia Broadcasting System suggest ex-footballer George Weah and current Vice President Joseph Boakai are leading.
LRP 0. IND 1.
How did this problem surface on the day of voting again? I thought we'd taken this long time to prepare for elections. We wouldn't have encountered such a minor problem that those who register, by any means, their names will be on the roster, because to register to vote in your country's elections, and you go there very early in the morning, and then at the end of the day, you are denied because your name is not on the roster. That's disenfranchising people. We don't think that was right.
We believe we are not competing against anybody here. To win the first one, you must compete against 50% and defeat it by one vote. So in the event where we realize that those discrepancies add up to an obstacle to us reaching 50% plus one, it would constitute sufficient grounds for the executive committee to authorize the legal team to take this issue for litigation.
Of course, we are still in constant contact with some of our contacts there in Monrovia. They're going to tell us once, alert us once the final results are made official there. Now, the United States announced on Thursday it was withdrawing from UNESCO, complaining about how it is run and about what Washington described as bias against Israel. Now, the withdrawal of the United States, which provides a fifth of UNESCO's funding, is a severe blow for the Paris-based organization, which began work in 1946 and is known for designating World Heritage sites such as the ancient city of Palmyra in Syria, the religious shrines in Timbuktu, and the Grand Canyon National Park. Now, the organization, which employs around 2,000 people worldwide, most of them based in Paris, has long been the object of criticism.
Remember what I said in 2011 already, when the United States lost its voting rights and suspended their payment, that the United States matters for UNESCO and UNESCO matters for the United States. In fact, if you go back into history, we will see not only that United States is a founding member of UNESCO, the whole idea that you can build peace through education, science, culture, communication is basically an American idea. If we are this large platform for intercultural dialogue, for human rights, for freedom of expression, for safety of journalists, working all across the board, for eradicating poverty, for fighting obscurantism, for fighting for literacy and for against ignorance, I think we need everybody on board, and particularly, of course, the United States, who are our founding member and one of our most important supporters in all of these endeavors.
Over to something interesting now. So, do you know how much your president is paid? Not so many African states make their president's salary known or, make it public. However, Tanzanian President John Magufuli, not so long ago, publicly revealed his official salary. And here's a look at what some other African leaders are paid. You've seen there, John Magufuli earns a total of $48,000, 108 million Tanzanian shillings a year. And then we have our own president, Uhuru Kenyatta, there almost earning, is it double or triple of what Magufuli earns at about $192,000 per year. That translates to 19.8 million Kenyan shillings a year. And then we have Jacob Zuma, the ANC leader and, of course, South Africa's president. He earns 3.4 million rand a year, and that translates to 250,000 USD. And then we have Muhammadu Buhari, who earns just 39,000 US dollars. Actually, I'm surprised. Of course, he's the president of the most populous country in Africa, Nigeria. Well, if you didn't know, now you've seen a sneak peek of the payslips of the most powerful men in the continent. Now, the election to pick the Democratic Republic of Congo's next president will not happen before early 2019, the Electoral Commission announced Wednesday. Now, polls were due this year, and a transitional deal aimed at avoiding fresh political bloodshed after President Joseph Kabila refused to step down when his second mandate ended in December. But the Independent National Electoral Commission said it will need another 504 days to prepare for the vote after the completion of an electoral census.
The chairman of the National Independent Electoral Commission is Mr. Kabila's crutch. That is to say, if he had not created insecurity in Kananga with the Kamuina and Safu phenomenon, this favored his misleading proposal, that of 504 days to organize the elections. We will never allow that. Want it or not, on December 31st, whether it rains or snows, we will stop this regime. But I tell you that whether rains or snows, we will go to the elections in December 2017. Otherwise, Kabila will provoke a civil war in this country. It will be catastrophic.
Let's now take you to the south of the continent, that is South Africa, where the Supreme Court of Appeal will give its verdict on Friday, the October 13th, in President Jacob Zuma's application for leave to appeal charges of alleged corruption and fraud leveled against him. Zuma and the South Africa's National Prosecuting Authority are asking for leave to appeal the North Gauteng High Court's April 2016 ruling that the 783 outstanding charges against him for alleged corruption must be reinstated. This is the second time Zuma and the NPA had been tried to convince the court that criminal charges should not be reinstated against him. Now, 225 Chinese peacekeepers were on Tuesday conferred with Peace Medal of Honor awards by the United Nations African Union Mission in Darfur, also well known as UNAMID. Now, the military engineers belong to the 13th dispatch of Chinese peacekeeping troops to the Sudan. The UN medals were presented by UNAMID Chief of General Staff Dennis Rutaha, who highly evaluated the performance of Chinese peacekeepers on Tuesday. After having arrived at its mission zone last December, the 13th batch of Chinese peacekeepers in Sudan has so far completed 89 projects, including auxiliary facility upgrading of the Nyala Airport, defense facility renovation for the Greda camp, and Friendship Bridge construction. Like its predecessors, this batch of Chinese peacekeepers have made outstanding contributions to the re-establishment of peace in Darfur and won praise from the UNAMID local government as well as the people there. Now, about 20 people have so far been found guilty in Nigeria for involvement with the terrorist group Boko Haram. Sources told journalists that closed-door trials were taking place at a military facility in north-central Niger State. They have been sentenced to between 5 and 8 years in prison. Now, the trial started on Monday, where so far more than 1,600 Boko Haram suspects are to be tried in the coming weeks, with a further 5,000 people after that. However, Amnesty International said the secretive proceedings were denying the suspects the right to a fair court process. Now, Rwanda's military has used affixation, electric shock and mock executions to torture confessions out of detainees, Human Rights Watch said in a report published this week. The rights watchdog confirmed 104 cases of people being illegally detained and tortured in Rwandan military detention centers between the year 2010 and 2016, according to the 91-page report, which estimates the true figure is much higher. It said that systematic torture by the military was often ignored by judges and prosecutors whenever complaints were made.
My long, hard battle began as soon as I was transferred at the office of the current Minister of Defense based in Kimihurura. I was taken to another room, to another office. There was a lot of materials used to torture people. I was tortured to such an extent they used electric cables. Sometimes they will come by during the night to call for interviews. During these interviews, that's when we were being tortured. They were beating us with sticks. They could slap you. Also know that they were depriving us of meals. Because all the time I did there, we only ate maize and beans with 1 liter of water. When we were in prison, we were told that I was cleared by the court. But on the day of release, the head of the prison, he told us that even though the court had declared our innocence, it was not to say that we had done nothing. I decided then to go into exile.
Now, a UN report on immigrants, West African migrants trying to reach Europe, are dying in far greater numbers in the Sahara than in the Mediterranean, but efforts to dissuade them may cause new routes to open up. This is according to a report by the United Nations International Organization for Migration. So far this year, 2,569 migrant deaths have been recorded in the central Mediterranean, while more than 107,000 migrants, mainly West Africans, have reached Italy.
First of all, if the... This is one question. The other one is...
Are asylum eligible for resettlement?
So one thing we still don't have is any estimate of the numbers of deaths in the desert. I think we assume, and we've said before, that it has to be at least double those who die in the Mediterranean, but we really have no evidence of that. It's just an assumption. What happens in Libya is far scarier to people than dying. The horror stories that returnees come back with. On the other hand, the desperation of some people who want to migrate is such that no message will really be able to deter them unless you offer an alternative. Right now, the route that is considered the safest is basically Senegal, Mauritania, Morocco.
Well, that report takes us to a very short break, but when we come back, we'll have a studio discussion which revolves around ethnicity and politics, how ethnicity is shaping our politics in this continent. We have our guest right here in studio with us, Javas Bigambo, Mark Bichachi, as well as anthropologist Hassan Kochore. As we take that break, let's also look at Events Africa. We'll be right back. Don't go too far.